I think, yeah, call me.
Yeah, I just let
I'll do that. Okay, calling those into question now. Not yet. And there,
about the thermal
wait for
plant.
Amy and there.
We'll have to talk to the DOT about it, because that was their job when they came in, so we'll just have to see exactly what we can do with it. So we're hoping right now to be able to even get somebody to quote it. Right now, they're having trouble, the DOT's having trouble finding painters. So, yeah, we can mention that.
That new dimension.
They're,
They still,
yeah, they're the ones that done ours. They were in here doing
but don't
the
they work?
DOTs when they were, after they resurfaced Main Street.
Yeah,
So we went ahead and contracted with them while they were here to mark hours. Well, they marked one street and left.
I got you.
And a year went by and they never
confused on their time, but they're on their way. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been playing quite a bit.
Still vaccinated and all that, we can change that. It's 5 days, so it's out 5 days to come back. We might have had one other one in sanitation.
I don't even think we made it.
2 weeks ago or something. but Where you? He's pushing 80.
Sorry, Mayor.
Okay. I know how that is. It's just a pattern.
Yeah, I put it in my calendar at 7,
That's
like
like
always.
3 weeks now. So. Well, people I understood that now, they're just doing. Lay around a few days, a little bit of sun, but for the most part, they're just, no energy. But it's going around again. In places. Not at this time. At some point in the future. Yeah, once you take it out, I think what really helps. It's going to be kids. I didn't worry about it. Okay. The minute that happens, take the bar to go. But anybody. They have their first. With the obituary hits. Whatever you got, volunteers, not them, so. I'm sorry, I didn't. You never did go. I texted her immediately, and she answered immediately. So, off into the rest of the day. nobody went. Now she really did. So he started going back when she retired. Of course, the clinic down in Franklin, a lot of stuff just go down there. So. Bases, and I actually worked in. Hardware.
Did you hear from Eric?
Yeah, he's on his way.
They were having. So they were doing a big test, it's just golf course down there.
We'll get here in about 3 minutes. We're gonna start.
See how much filtration out of the soil with cottonwood grows with create.
Let me call to order this special meeting of the Highlands Board of Commissioners. Tonight, I want to express my appreciation for your patience with our little slight delay. The other thing I would like to make sure we do, at the last meeting, we had some issues about audio and we did the research on it. The problem is we need to speak into the mic. I was watching a performer last night and their lips were almost touching the mic. I'm not asking the commissioners to do that tonight, but when we speak, we need to speak into the microphone, and we're pretty confident if that happens, everyone who is joining us with YouTube will be able to hear our comments. So with that, I know that our town manager, Mr. Ward, has requested an addition to the agenda. So Mr. Ward, would you propose what you would like to add?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, under number 4, I'd like to add substitution of counsel for the Huff case.
Okay. And we have Mr. Hagerman here who can answer any questions about that procedure. Thank you very much. Any objections to us not adding the item 4? I'll call for a vote then. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and signifying by saying aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, the purpose of this meeting tonight, the primary purpose is to have a public hearing addressing the Highlands Comprehensive Community Plan. At our last board meeting, we had a final presentation by the Stewart Company concerning the plan, and tonight we will be having a public hearing. I want to make sure that everybody understands this is not a public hearing on short-term rentals tonight. We will be having one of those at a later date to be announced, but tonight this is a public hearing for citizen input on the Highlands Comprehensive Community Plan. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and signify by saying aye. Thank you. Our public hearing is now open. And the next thing would be staff comments and recommendations. Mr. Ward? Or Mr. Mathis?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to touch on what the mayor said, at our June 16th regular town board meeting, Allison Evans with the Stewart firm gave this board and the community an overview of the Highlands Community Plan. Today, I want to reference state law regarding comprehensive plans. First, North Carolina General Statute 160D 501A states, as a condition of adopting and applying zoning regulations under this chapter, a local government shall adopt and reasonably maintain a comprehensive plan or land use plan. Section A1 of this same chapter states a comprehensive plan sets forth goals, policies, and programs intended to guide present and future physical, social, and economic development of the jurisdiction. A comprehensive land use plan is intended to guide coordinated, efficient, and orderly development within the planning and development regulation jurisdiction based on an analysis of present and future needs. Section C of this chapter says plans adopted under this chapter shall be advisory in nature without independent regulatory effect. Plans adopted under this chapter do not expand, diminish, or alter the scope of authority for development regulations adopted under this chapter. According to the state of North Carolina, each municipality must adopt their land use or comprehensive plan by July 1st, 2022. As Allison referenced at our previous meeting, the town of Highlands began this community plan process in the summer of 2020. Since then, we have engaged in several surveys, public meetings, and draft plan revisions. After taking all public input into consideration, town staff, along with the Stewart Consulting Firm, is proud to present the first ever Town of Highlands Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Board did review this item at a special meeting on June 7th, 2022. Their recommendation is to approve the Highlands Community Plan as presented. The staff recommendation is to also approve the Town of Highlands Community Plan as submitted.
Thank you, Michael. Our next item would be public comments. I would invite the public to please come forward. If you'd like to make a comment, please state your name for the record, and I would appreciate you holding your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. So I'm going to open up the floor. If anyone would like to now come up and make a comment about the Highlands Comprehensive Community Plan.
Good evening. My name is David B. I'm here on behalf of Save Highlands. And we continue to fight for the rights of short-term rental owners and managers, as well as property rights for everyone in Highlands. Our position on the comprehensive plan is that the comprehensive plan should reflect the will of all Highlanders who have shown overwhelming support for short-term rentals and account for the Highlands economy, which is fueled by the revenue short-term rentals generate in connection with local employment and tourism. The comprehensive plan goals should be goals and policies reflected in the comprehensive plan to inform and support, to inform and suggest the town, how the town regulates short-term rentals. And the draft of the community plan states that it should encourage lodging and tourism-related rentals while limiting any negative impact on existing residents and businesses. And it should monitor and mitigate the impact of short-term rentals on the Highlands community. The town can accomplish these goals with existing nuisance ordinances. If a short-term rental regulation conflicts with the comprehensive plan, the town should amend the regulation and not the comprehensive plan. Save Highlands is deeply invested in protecting the individual rights that Highlanders have always enjoyed, and Save Highlands urges the town to honor these rights and to consider the widespread support of short-term rentals and their role in sustaining the Highlands economy.
Thank you. Anyone else?
The comprehensive plan. I guess when I looked at it, I think that the comprehensive plan, I'm sorry.
Pull it down. There you go.
Okay. When I looked into the comprehensive plan, it looked like what has been said before about short-term rentals falls into the tier 3, where you find a pathway for short-term rentals to be allowed that have already existed. And I just want to speak to that for a second. I got to say, for a realtor, I'm probably one of the only people that would like not to see short-term rentals in R1. And my reasoning is either, I mean, I own a house on Laughing Bear Trail, and it's quite unique. The wood in it, the interior was felled in Horse Cove in 1850, so it's 175 years old. Throughout the house are other things I saved for 33 years to make it my own and implemented them in the building of it. And, you know, there was nobody next to me. Eventually somebody built. It was a family home. They were nice people. I give them access through my yard to their home. And then unfortunately, the husband died and the wife had the short-term rental. That really affected me in a big way. I like privacy. I knew my neighbors. All of a sudden, I didn't know anyone. And her driveway is steep, and so there's a continual spinning of tires, and people left parking on the entry or the access or at the road right away, which makes it hard for me to manipulate. Anyway, long story short, I moved back to Horse Cove when I had the opportunity and long-term rented my home for 20 months to a local business people at a reasonable rate. And that house became vacant. They found their homes in January. And I have been redoing my house thinking that either the short-term rental would be over and I would move back into my home, or I would also be able to short-term rent and join the fray and stay, short-term renting it. But the way it turns out, it looks like the only pathway people are working on is to make the short-term rental available to those who have done that, who have been doing it. And I say, that's not fair. It's not right. If you're making the value of my property less valuable to those people who are looking for an investment property, which is a short-term rental, versus mine, which is not allowed to be a short-term rental. And therefore, the people who are seeking a house that's not a short-term rental don't want one in their yard or that has access through their property. It's affecting me and the value of my home. And I think it ought to be addressed. And I think that instead of just a pathway in the short-term rental part of the comprehensive plan that says this is the way we're going to allow those that have already existed, there ought to be something where if they can do it, whether legal or not, or whether you implement it legally or not, or however it's done, so should I be able to. And if they haven't, without any permission or whatever, I don't see that I have to have it either. So that's what I wanted to say. I want you to please consider that.
Thank you.
I'm a Highlander that loves Highlands, been here since 1975. Saved those things for 33 years to put in my home. They mean a lot to me.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Do we have anyone else who would like to make a comment?
Hello, yes, I'm Pat Allen. I've lived here full-time 28 years. I appreciate your comments, Ellie. And all of this just seems so blown out of proportion. If you think about how few complaints we get, if you talk to Sissy, the neighborhoods who are really disturbed by these young and restless that come here. I, for instance, sold to a doctor and his wife in a neighborhood, and she called me and said the local people across the street, who is a fireman in town, just every weekend are sitting out on the porch drinking beer and yelling and watching TV and sports. So it's not these short-term rental owners that should be punished for something that's been allowed for 40 years. It should just be enforced. Call the police, let the homeowners know, and it will eventually stop. But when you start banning homeowners' rights, that is just wrong. That borders on communism, if you ask me. They have a right to do with that house what they want. There are laws in place. You call the law enforcement and take care of it. But I just think this whole thing is blown out of proportion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments about the Highlands Comprehensive Community Plan?
Good evening. My name's Denise Boothby, and we live over on Azalea Circle. I wasn't really prepared to speak tonight about short-term rental because I thought that
And-
wasn't
and
what this was about.
It's not about that.
So, but I do appreciate your comments, Pat, and agreement with that on our property rights. But I have a question for you on the plan. Haven't read it in detail, but I've looked through it and I'm curious. I think you've got a lot of really great ideas for the developing some of the commercial building with the living on top, some of the smaller area housing, ways you want to build out in the commercial development. I'm just kind of curious, in those plans, how does that roll out? Is that for corporate or business development, or individual investors can invest and build in those areas? Or is this going to be a government housing build out. I'm just wondering how you see the development of these areas and who's going to be able to be a part of those and involved in that. So,
Thank you. Would anyone like to respond? I believe in free enterprise, and I think that that will be the guiding principle behind that development and not controlled by the government.
So it hasn't been decided yet. That's part of the process.
It's an open process, yes. Mhm. Any other comments?
I am Ricky Siegel and I'm a full-time Highlander. And I just want to mention that STRs are not prohibited in Highlands in all zones. If you're zoned properly, you can have a short-term rental. And in certain areas, the original UDO says you cannot have short-term rentals. I don't think short-term rental should be in residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion that we close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by raise your hand, signifying by saying aye. Thank you. We have now closed the public hearing, and the next item would be council action. Let me make one point, and Josh, you can, reinforce this. This is a conceptual, roadmap, a guide for the future of Highlands. That does not preclude, once we adopt this, if we do this tonight, that certain parts can't be amended and revisited at another point in time. So any comments from the board concerning taking action?
I want to ask a question about action item 7 on page 70.
Okay.
Josh, you want me to hand that to you or you got it?
You've got it, Andy.
And the question is?
Look, Josh, read it.
Consider updates to land use regulations to define STRs as a use and establish restrictions or an additional approval requirement.
Are you looking at that, Bob, on page 70? Have you got it?
Can't hear you.
Bob, have you got, can you see page 70? I'm not sure. There's a couple of things here. Josh, it says consider requiring a minimum length of stay, but we decided not to do that, right?
Correct.
So maybe that should be stricken, Mr. Mayor, from the last sentence. And then, do we want to say voluntary registration, Josh? On 7A, on action item number 7, it says voluntary registration. I thought we didn't want to do that.
I think I would leave it the way it's worded at this point. I don't think that's going to make a difference.
Bob, you can't see it, can you?
This is, Commissioner, this is suggestions for us to consider.
Right.
You can consider it and decide no.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be what we decide in the future as a regulatory or legislative action. We consider these things, but we don't have to do them. It asks you to consider them. And that is what we are doing, is considering them. But if we decide, the answer can be either yes or no.
Yes, but we decided we're not going to look at minimum stay, right?
We haven't.
I
come to
don't
that
think
point.
we've
We
come
have
to
not at
that
this time,
conclusion
yeah.
yet. I think we're still in the process. I mean, it's going back through the planning board. We're still going to be looking at it. So whatever we decide in the future will be what we decide.
Right.
It asks us to consider those things. And in fact, I believe the planning board considered that in their initial back in
Right.
February.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then y'all, we're not going to look at it. And I didn't know if we still were going to consider that.
You can consider it anytime you want to before we do a legislative rule.
It's unfortunate that Bob can't read this. All right.
Okay. Bob, do you want to make a comment about your review of the comprehensive plan as it pertains to STRs?
Well, you have not made, as the Commissioner said, you have not made your policy decision yet. And you are free to deviate from the plan and adopt regulatory provisions that are not consistent with the plan. So I'm not troubled by what I understand, and I cannot see the document, but I'm not troubled by that language being in the plan right now. That does not dictate or foreclose any policy decision you make through an amendment to the actual ordinance.
Any other comments or questions? I sure would.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the comprehensive plan as a guideline for us to use it in our deliberations in the future.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed. Okay, for approval and one opposed. Thank you very much. This is a critical document. It's a critical procedure that we have to have completed by tomorrow. And if we failed to have done that, it would have impacted our ability to do zoning and everything in the future. So thank everyone for going through this process. And I want to thank the community for all of the stakeholders who invested time and energy in providing information and feedback that created this plan. It isn't a board plan, it's a community plan. And I was very gratified to know that we had such a strong response to the different work sessions, the surveys that were out and so forth. So I'm glad that we now have this plan in place. Thank you very much. All right, our next item on the agenda will be an update by me on short-term rental amendments. And let me first of all say that we have our attorneys who are working on a draft of amendments. They will still be working on that. I had proposed earlier at our board meeting that those would be ready for the planning board on July the 12th. That's not feasible. We need more time. So I'm proposing that we now have a special board meeting on the 14th of July, where those amendments will be presented by our attorneys, and then the board will review those draft amendments and examine them, make changes if they feel that is necessary. And then from there, those draft amendments would go to the planning board. And I would anticipate that we would be able to get them to the planning board on their regular scheduled meeting on July the 25th. If we needed more time even to process these amendments among ourselves, we will still have a town board meeting before the planning board meets. The town board meeting would be on July the 21st. But once they receive those amendments in that draft, the planning board can then take 30 days or longer to review and make their recommendations. That would indicate that they would be ready to make recommendations at their next August meeting. But like I say, we do not want to rush through this process. We want to make sure that everybody gets a time to do the review, and then we would set a public hearing to be determined at a later date. So
What time will that meeting be, Mr. Mayor?
on the 14th, Commissioner Hayne was bringing that same question up. It could be same time as we're having this meeting, or earlier or later. What's the feeling of the board on the 14th when we would be able to meet.
Must be good with you.
6 o'clock is fine with me.
Is everybody in agreement that we could meet at 6 o'clock?
If you remind me.
Okay. Yes, you and Eric. All right,
I get
we'll,
it in
we'll
my
set
brain.
that for 6 o'clock. And Josh, we will get out an announcement and advertise that because this will be an open public meeting. All right. Thank you very much. The next item would be the substitution of counsel for the Huff case. And this is a procedural process that we have to go through. One of our attorneys, Craig Justice, resigned his position. And I know Bob Hagerman can talk us through what the board needs to do now in the context of Mr. Justice's resignation. So Bob, would you explain to us what we need to do?
I'd be happy to, Mayor. So because Mr. Justice appeared in the court filings as representing the town, he needs a court order to be able to withdraw. The easiest way to accomplish this, if you're agreeable, is to authorize Pointer Spruill, my law firm, on your behalf to consent to his withdrawal through a substitution of counsel. What we would then do is submit paperwork with the court by consent to get an order from the court allowing Mr. Justice to withdraw as your attorney in the case and to substitute in his place Pointer Spruill, my law firm. And we would then work with the plaintiff's attorney to try to hopefully resolve the case. Given that the subject matter of the case, we believe is not something that the council is pursuing at this time. So a simple motion to authorize Pointer Spruill to make an appearance on behalf of the town to consent to Mr. Justice's withdrawal and to substitute Pointer Spruill in place of his law firm as your counsel in the case would be in order.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions of Mr. Hagerman before I entertain a motion? Would someone like to make that motion or try to capture what?
Motion that we recommend appointing Pointer Spruill to take replace Craig Justice in our lawsuit in this case.
And give them authorization to make that motion in court.
Yes.
Second.
Is that correct? Okay, we have a second. Does that capture the need that you have, Bob?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That motion is adequate.
Okay, very good. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And opposed. We have 4 for and 1 opposed. All right. Next, we have the last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, Bob, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.